Hi, everybody. This is Kelly Ashby with Kelly Ashby Consulting. I have Scott Kokenauer with Serving Strong with me today. And Scott, I know you do a lot of leadership coaching and work with executives. I have one question for you. What's one thing that you would say to leaders right now with what we're dealing with the pandemic?
Sure. Kelly, thank you for joining, or for allowing me to join with you. I've been thinking about that a lot because the situation that we're in right now as a world, we're all facing the pandemic of COVID-19. And I'm thinking, what impact is that having on leadership? And there's a principle that I think is always present. And if you don't mind, I'll show the back end, the backstage of Serving Strong. And I pulled up this particular question: what keeps a leader from succeeding? So what I do is I look at symptoms, problem, cure. I have an example and a conclusion. If you look at the symptoms here, um, well, first of all, before we talk about what keeps a leader from succeeding, what does a leader who is not succeeding look like? So they go home at night feeling further behind than they were at the beginning of the day. They feel like all they did was put out fires all day. Their clients seem to be increasingly dissatisfied. Seems like they're having the same conversations with their team about what needs changed, and they keep having them over and over again. They have this nagging sense that there's something more that they should be doing. They don't know what it is, but they have this nagging feeling that there's something deeper. They don't feel like they're engaged, and their leaders that they're delegating activities to keep coming back to them with reverse delegation. So that's the symptom, and it's not a pretty sight. Uh, the problem here is distraction. Here's what I mean by that. Number one, let's talk about stats. The average worker wastes 60 hours every month due to workplace distractions. 60 hours a month per worker.
Wow.
A third of employees are distracted at work for a total of up to 3 hours a day. 56 interruptions a day on average. 80% of interruptions at work are considered trivial. 60% or less of work time is actually spent productively. Interruptions cause employees to take 27% more time to complete a task, and mainly because you get into your mind what you're working on, and when you get interrupted, you have to come back out of that, deal with the interruption, and then re-engage. And it's not like you just quickly go right back to that. Now, there's a source here, the TalkBox booth that I got some of these. You'll find these studies are all over the place, that distraction causes a waste of time. Where the buck stops, this is where the leader comes into play. Because the leader is ridiculously in charge, they've got a target on their back. If they're not careful, the people that they train to bring, they train their people how to treat them. So if they're always in fix-it mode, and their leaders are coming back to them saying, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? If not careful, they'll slip into what is called fix-it mode. And circumstances like the one we're in right now act as a magnifier, a multiplier to the cost of this sort of distraction. So the average worker gets distracted with trivial. The average leader gets distracted by things that he has or she has delegated to others. So this is a problem. This is what's going on. It's distraction. What is the cure? So I thought about the cure, and really what it is depth. The cure to distraction is depth. And we talk about two things in depth. The first is the balcony. The second is the big question. So the balcony is this idea of taking off your dancing shoes and going to the balcony and looking down over the dance floor. It's many leaders that I work with, because of crisis and putting out fires and that sort of thing, they step out of their leader role and go into a manager role. And although that's a nice place to visit, it's not the place to live. So you have to get out of that management, off the dance floor, and back and go up to the balcony, take a look at everything, make a list of everything that's in your mind. When you're in the balcony, you need to make a list of everything is in your mind. Here's why. Something therapeutic about taking a thought, or what is mostly the case, always the case, is hundreds, dozens of thoughts in your mind that are flying around, And so it's almost like that booth that you go in and they have the air starts blowing and all these dollars are flying around and you're trying to grab all these things. That's what your mind is taking up, trying to grab all these thoughts. What you do when you make a list and literally with your hand, I encourage. Now I'm a big digital person. You're looking at a workflowy that I use, but I really encourage when your mind is overwhelmed to get a piece of paper and a pen and literally write each thought as the thought comes to you. Because what you're doing is you're getting it out of your mind through your arm, through your hand, through the pen and onto paper. And that right there alone is therapeutic. But secondly, what you end up with is a dance floor. That piece of paper becomes the dance floor. You have now physically put yourself over all of your thoughts, not in this booth where all the thoughts are going all over the place. So when you do that, that then allows you to have the mind space to look at the big picture. And this is leveraging your mind for the most profitable involvement. When you can take a step up into the balcony, take your dance shoes off, quit dancing for a moment, and reflect. Now, what is the balcony? Well, for a lot of leaders, successful leaders, that balcony is the first thing they do in the morning. It may mean minimal, your short visits to the balcony throughout the day. I encourage bookends, balcony bookends, a beginning of the day and an end of the day reflection time. This is where you get it all out on paper and you think big picture. That's the balcony. When you're there, when you're thinking about all the stuff you're doing as a leader, you ask yourself a key question: what must be done that only I can do? That question contains two parts. One is what must be done. And there are a lot of things that must be done to keep an organization successful, but not all of those things that must be done have to be done by the leader. Mm-hmm. So you have to have yes to both. Now, you could have yes to the first one, no to the other one. Yes, it's must be done, but someone else can do it. You could have yes to the second part. No, it doesn't have to be done, but it's something only I can do. If there's a no to either one of those sections of that question, the leader needs to not be doing it. Let me give you an example. I have a client who has hired me to help him with productivity and to get him on track and moving forward toward a personal goal and strategic for the company. And I was in his office one day and I walked past his office and noticed him engaged in an activity. He was kind of feverishly working on something. So I asked him if he wouldn't mind if I sat down and just kind of observed. He said, no problem. So I sat down and I watched as he pulled up a spreadsheet on his computer and he wrote down some things on a deposit slip and had a few checks that he was looking at. And I said, what exactly are you doing here? He said, well, I have some rental properties that, and a lot of successful leaders, a lot of entrepreneurs are in real estate. They have these tenants and the real estate game is a big part of successful entrepreneurship. And he was no example. He was also one of those. So he said, every week I put together a deposit slip from all the checks I get from all my tenants. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working on it. I don't really like to do it because I'm not a detailed person, but I've got to do it. It has to get deposited. So we work through the steps that he goes through. I noticed right off the bat that there was some duplication of work and all that sort of thing. But I said, is this something that could possibly be done by someone else? And he looked at me and he said, I really wish someone else would do it because I hate doing this, but it's got to be done. And long story short, what we did was we outlined step by step what he has to do to get from a bunch of checks to a deposit in his bank. We turned to his assistant, brought her in and laid this all out and said, would you be willing to do this? She said, oh my word, I would love to do this. This is what gives me meaning as a person. That, Kelly, that saved him 40 minutes every week.
Wow.
And so to put meaning to that, to the bottom line, um, I walked him through his worth as per hour, his cost per hour, and what we did was we don't just look at salary and benefits and all that sort of thing, but we look at his volume as an overall organization. And then I like to help my clients look at what is the percentage of revenue that is influenced by your direct influence. And because that's a big part of the value of his time, or of any leader's time. So we did all that. And we came to the conclusion that we have saved him, just by this one activity that took 40 minutes a week, saved him over 6 figures, over $100,000 and per year. This isn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't a project. It was an activity, a reoccurring activity. This is $100,000 every single year. Now he's got 40
That's
minutes
amazing.
every week that he can devote to profit generating activities, something that has to be done that only he can do. So this is the sort of thing that I want my clients to be able to get insight in when they're at their own balconies and they're asking what must be done that only I can do. So the conclusion is, it will be the wiser leader who slips away from the dance floor to the balcony, who reflects on the big picture, and who asks, what must be done that only I can do? Now, if I told a leader every trip to the balcony would be $100,000 directly to your bottom line, do you think she would go to the balcony more often?
Oh
I
yeah,
think so.
definitely.
I think so. So this is what we did. I basically took him to the balcony, and we saved $100,000 per year. That is the value of depth of thinking, because we always underestimate the power of deep thinking. And that's what I would tell to leaders right now. That's what I want leaders to do, is have that reflection time every single day, whether you feel like it or not. Empty your mind and then ask that key question, the big question: what must be done that only I can do?
I think that's really powerful advice. Makes perfect sense to me, and I can put this into my own practice right away. So great advice,
Yeah.
great stepping us through each one of those pieces, Scott. Anything else you'd like to share as far as guiding anybody anywhere for more information?
Sure. If you're watching this and you want to get the link to what you're looking at right here, I'm an avid user of Workflowy, and it's an outlining tool. And I'm beginning to put a lot of my thoughts together in this section of my workflow, and I've decided to go ahead and give that link to anybody who wants it. So go to servingstrong.com/outlines, and you will be able to request access to this spot anytime I add any kind of outline. It'll be the outlines that I put together for my own videos and for my own blog posts, and maybe if I do a podcast down the road, it'll be the back end. It's kind of like the back office or backstage.
That sounds wonderful, Scott. That's very generous of you to share such great information. So very nice resource and great information. So this is Scott Kokenauer with Serving Strong, and great information about what leaders can do right now. Get off the dance floor and get up in the balcony so that you can free up some time for the big picture items. This is Kelly Ashby with Kelly Ashby Consulting. Scott, thank you for joining me today to share this great information.
Thank you, Kelly, for having me.
You bet. Have a great day.
Okay.